There's a letter written by the Rebbe Rayatz in 1940, the summer of 1940. And when I think of those times, it must have been a very challenging time, because summer of 1940, well, we don't need to explain much. He himself had just arrived in America, been saved. His daughter was murdered with her husband shortly afterwards. His other daughter was still stuck over there. That son-in-law would become the Rebbe, but he was still stuck in Paris, and the Jews were being decimated. He just came out of Warsaw himself. It was a difficult time, not to mention everything else that was happening in communist Russia. And then he comes to America, and America doesn't seem to be exactly the greatest Jewish, bastion of Torah. And yet he writes the following letter. The letter is very powerful. I want to give you the background. The background is, the letter is written to a man by the name of Aaron Hirsch. So I did some research to know who this guy Aaron Hirsch was. And evidently the letter is actually addressed to Aaron Levitt, because Aaron Hirsch changed his name from Hirsch to Levitt. Why? Because right before then, he was a wealthy man. He was a very learned man, and he also lost all his fortune, everything. So he had no choice. He declared bankruptcy. And when he did, he must have evidently fallen into a very hopeless, depressing stint and a very difficult situation. That's why, legally, for whatever reason, he was obligated to change his name. He moved from Aaron Hirsch to Aaron Levitt. What's interesting about this individual is that he became the author of a publication that the Rebbe Rayatz put out. It was called Hakriya Ve'Akdusha. It was a Yiddish publication, and it was designed to essentially to bring Judaism and real true Judaism to the public out there. So he makes this newspaper, and he needed an editor. Very little is known about the editor, but he wasn't a chassid, and he dafka wanted that, someone who can understand the people in that time spoke Yiddish. That was the generation of Yiddish. So this guy became the author, the editor. But the letter is written to him at a time when he was feeling hopeless. Just another aside about this individual. He was a prolific writer, because the letter opens up, and the Rebbe Rayatz tells him, he says, I very much value when a person has a prolific writing. I love seeing writing which is not overdramatic and yet eloquent. At the same time, I like it when it has good content, and you have both. Then he proceeds to explain to him, but I don't like what you wrote about. In other words, you write well, and you're full of light, teichen, in what you write. But what you write is actually very dark. Now, I just want to say another aside. This guy, he was all the time under pseudonyms. I don't know why, but whatever he was writing, he wrote without his name. He wrote a book in English, and the book is called Bible Unauthorized. Now, this book was written in the 40s, 1940 approximately, then somewhere around there. And he wrote the book, and when he did, he wrote under a pseudonym. The name of the author is A.H. Moose. When you look at the name, you see what a profound individual this man was. So a moose, what's a moose in accurate Yiddish? A hirsch. Hirsch is actually a moose. So his original name is Avram Hirsch. So he writes A.H. Avram Hirsch, Moose. A.H. Moose. Somebody pointed out, read the words, what do you see? The book is about the Bible Unauthorized, about the veracity and truth of the Bible. And actually, the Rebbe Rayatz wanted to know, I guess he didn't read English properly, so he found someone to read the English for him, the book, to see if this book was acceptable or not. He asked his son-in-law, who became the Rebbe, I guess later on when he arrived, 1941, he asked him to read the book. And he read the book, and his comment was that exactly, I'd prefer if you change certain things, but under the circumstances of the times, there's very few people who've taken a stance on Judaism, be able to write a book that's really acceptable in this regard, and therefore, yes, and I think the Rabbi Yaz gave him $7, which must have been a large amount of money at the time. A.H. Moose. Say it out, what do you get? Amos. Very powerful. A.H. Moose is Amos. Right? Play on the word Amos. So he's writing about Amos, and deep down he chose this name. It's very it's beautiful to see poetry in its depth. The letter goes like this. He says to him, I don't like what you wrote, because your letter is full of yeush, of despair. And what I detect in your letter is that you've given up hope. Presumably had to do with his filing bankruptcy from being a wealthy man. I don't know if he was wealthy because of his editorial skills, but he was editor of some very prominent Yiddish papers. And he says, you seem to be in a state of despair. And I want you to know that the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, has a sword. And on the sword, he has the edge of his sword. What makes it so strong is his ability to put you into a state of despair. Because there is nothing that will do you more harm than yeush. Once you have fallen into a state of despair, suddenly you're lost and you have no hope. This letter, by the way, came in to have a feed of different letters that get posted by me every single day. It's a few WhatsApp groups I'm on, and this letter came up today. So this morning, woke up early in the morning at 4:30. This is what I was reading, and I saw the letter was in short, and I went to read. I was absolutely fascinated by it, and I went to read the whole letter. So the letter goes like this. He says to him, I want to tell you a story. And the story is that the Rebbe Rashab, my father, had a certain chassid. His name was Chazanov. Now, this Chazanov he was a very wealthy man. He had a lot of forest that he owns and grinding mills and different ventures that he undertook. He was a very, very successful individual for many, many, many years. He was a big Baal Chesed. He would give a lot of money to tzedakah. He was an incredible individual until one day he became a little older and he gave over the business to his son. So he was much less involved. He was still on top of the business. He was the CEO and president, but the one who was running it was his son-in-law, and a manager. And the year Tofrei Samach Dalet came along, 1904. In 1904, everything went down and went south. And when it did, they discovered that they lost everything. So they were trying whatever they could. They literally invested. It required them to invest every single ounce of their strength in order to make this business succeed. They did it. Everything failed. And at the end of it, they were stuck. They came to the Rebbe Rashab, and this guy, Chazanov, is full of despair when he came in. And he said to the Rebbe, they were having an argument, him versus his son-in-law, the manager. He said that we should sell everything and cut our losses and at least pay some of our debts. 40% of the debts we'll be able to pay if we sell everything. We'll still be stuck with 60%. I don't have a solution for that. And his son-in-law and the manager said, let's sell part of it, but not everything, and we won't pay all the debts. We'll only pay 15%. The question, what should they do? Both groups did not sound too confident. And the Rebbe Rashab looked at them and he said as follows. Very interesting, the answer that he gave. He said, in Vienna, there is a park. Sounds to me like an amusement park. And it sounds to me like this is the beginning of this, look what he describes. He says they have a metal ball, a wheel, over there. And this metal ball is attached to it wagons. Like, a wagon, which is with the horses ride. The wagons are attached, but the wagons have on them glass. And so you can actually see all around you. And what happens is the metal is a wheel, and it lifts up the wagons. And so the wagons go, and when you get to the top of the wagon, you can actually see all over. The sight is phenomenal. You know what that's called? It sounds like a Ferris wheel. And he describes the first Ferris wheel, I guess, in Vienna. He says that the thing is that when you get to the top, you feel like you're on top of the world. You can see far, you can see everything, you feel so good, it's so exciting. But actually, you're on a wheel. And the next step is down. Then when you're on the bottom, you can't see anything. And you feel like everything is messed up. But the truth is, when you're on the bottom, it's a wheel. You're about to go up. In life, it's the same thing. There is a circle of life. Life is a cycle. And what happens is, sometimes you're on the top, sometimes you're on the bottom. When you're on the top and you're successful, you feel proud, you feel excited, you feel like you own the world. And you walk around, zachut hadat it's called. You're feeling good about yourself, you're feeling very powerful, you're standing in your power. Well, careful not to be too proud, because it's not going to last. You're actually on the way down. And it's going to be cyclic. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs. When you're feeling proud, don't get so excited. It's all Hashem anyway. Sometimes in life, you're at the bottom of life and you feel a state of total despair. Don't fall into total despair because you're on the next level. You're about to go up. So the Rebbe Rayatz tells this chassid, he says, now listen here. Your mission is one simple thing. Sorry, the Rebbe Rashab said this. He said, I want you to do one simple thing. He said, you switch the Yeush for trust in Hashem. Instead of being in a state of despair, trust in Hashem. What should you do? Go buy some more forests and some more grinding mills. And he says, and just march forward, 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 forward. And you will see great things will happen to you. Here's the key. And the Rebbe Rayatz tells Aaron Levitt the same thing. He says to them, here's the message to you. You're never allowed to think of how glorious and light the past was. You're never allowed to think of how awesome it was in the past. You have to focus on the future. And you never allowed to think about how gloomy the future looks based on the present. So when your Yetzer Hara, your evil inclination, tells you the future is gloomy, shut him off. And when he tells you the past was great, shut him off. How? Just don't think about it. And what you do is you march forward with absolute trust, with absolute bitachon, and you march forward. Now the question is, that's the letter. What does it mean? How do we do this? And what exactly is the process? What if I can't do it? What if I find it very difficult to do? Life often leads us into positions that we never dreamed of. So by not doing anything wrong, by just living life, you often find yourself in a position that you're ready for a despair. And as we're going to see, these are two modalities of living life. You see, we go back to the story which we occupied with in the parashiyos of these weeks. It's the story of Yaakov and Esav. It's the mortal war that exists between Jacob and his brother Esau. And they're fighting, and it's life and death. Yaakov stole the brachas, the blessings, which Yitzchak, his father, wanted to give to Esav. He stole them. He came inside, he wore the garments of Esav, and thereby took the brachas for himself. Here's the question. What would have happened if Yaakov would not have done this? What would life have looked like if Yitzchak would have actually given the bracha to Esav, and then Yaakov would have had to live his own life? Would it have been so bad? Which means, on a very surface level, when you read the story, what seems to happen is Yitzchak seems to be saying, hey, I want to give the brachas to Esav. In other words, the others would be, the patriarchs would be Avram, Yitzchak, and, I can't even say it, but Esav. And Rivka says, it's not Avram, Yitzchak, and Esav, it's Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. You got the wrong kid. So she says, we can't go to him, we got to go to him. And she sends him on a different path. And so she says, But I want to take you on a theoretical path and see what would have happened if not. And this is an explanation given by the Mittler Rebbe, son of the Balatanya, in Teres Chaim. And he explains as follows. He says, you see, Yitzchak was not making a mistake. Yitzchak was doing this deliberately. He wanted intentionally to give a bracha to Esav. The reason is because the word bracha doesn't mean blessing, but rather it means bring down Hashem. So the reason why he wants to give a bracha to Esav is because he needs it. Very simple. So here's what would it be. Had the bracha gone straight from Avram to Yitzchak to Yaakov, that would have been fine. So Yaakov would have got one type of blessing, one type of bracha, and Esav would have got another type. And here's how he explains it. He says, it was very clear that Yaakov was holy, and Yitzchak was very, very, very crystal clear on the fact that Yaakov was his heir. He knew that, and not Esav. So he says, I'm going to give the regular bracha to Yaakov, and I'm going to give a different type of bracha to Esav. What's the bracha? So Avraham Avinu was promised the land of Israel. Eretz Canaan. He says, Hashem tells him, Lech lecha, go from your land, ela aretz asher ha'eket, to the land which I'll show you. He says, go and find the land. And that land was the land of Israel. And then he tells him, Lecha ulezaracha natati et haaretz hazot. I'm going to give this land to you and to your children. Right? Very powerful. Did you see the video a little while back where, amazing how Israel changed, the leader of the opposition party in Israel, which is supposed to be anti-religious, etc., he said that the reason why the land of Israel belongs to us is because God said to Abraham, he said, Lecha ulezaracha natati kol haaretz hazot. If the opposition in Israel says that, we're in good shape. We'll do well. So he says the land is yours. Avraham got it. He gave that bracha over to Yitzchak, and Yitzchak gives the bracha over to Yaakov. So it's very clear, the land of Israel is yours. But you know what Esav gets? The rest of the world. That's what Esav gets. There's a land of Israel, but then there's the rest of the world. So Yitzchak looks and he says, okay, very simple. Yaakov is clearly my son. Definitely, not even a question. So I'm giving him the blessings of Avraham Avinu goes to Yaakov. But the thing is that there's brachas which I have to give to Esav also. And that is because there's the nations of the world, the rest of the world. And the rest of the world, I got to give them a bracha from to Esav. That's why it explains the story. Because Esav makes no sense. Esav comes to Yaakov and to Yitzchak, and he fooled him. Esav pretended to be a holy man. He would walk inside and he would ask his father, Abba, how do you tithe straw? How do you tithe salt? And his father listened and he thought, wow, this kid's such a holy kid. And he wants to know, he's so machmir. He's stringent even when you don't have to take. He wants to know how to tithe. So he thought, Tzayid Befiv, he thought that Esav was hunting him down and Esav was a liar. And if that's the case, Yaakov stole the brachas because Yitzchak was not aware of what was going on. Actually, Yitzchak was very aware of what was going on. Because when Yaakov walks in, dressed up as Esav, what did Yitzchak tell him? He says, Akol kol Yaakov. You sound like Yaakov, but you feel like Esav. Why do you sound like Yaakov? You know that I know that we like to say, Esav spoke with a gruff voice, and Yaakov was so sweet. That's not true. They were twins. They spoke the same way. And the difference was that Yaakov, when he walks in, he said to him, that was quick. What did Yaakov say? Ki hikra Hashem elokecha lefanai. Hashem, your God, made me run quickly. So he's like, what? You mention Hashem? You mention God? That's not Esav. Esav doesn't mention the name of Hashem. Must be Yaakov. Come in, let me feel you. And you wonder, one second, if you know that Esav is actually lying to you and does not mention the name of God, so why is it your intention to give him the bracha? And the answer is, because he needs it. Because he senses this Esav's got big problems. So Esav represents the nations of the world. And the nations of the world, they also need a bracha. Trouble is, we see it very clearly today. the Eretz Yisrael, what's called today the state of Israel, cannot exist on its own. You're part of the world, and there's other countries, and you can't just ignore them. I mean, it's good to ignore them, am levadad yishkon, but on the other hand, if you ignore them all, they can really destroy you. So you really have to know how to maneuver yourself within the United Nations, but you have no choice. You have to handle the situation. There are other nations. You have to walk around and figure out what to do with them. So it's critical that the nations also get a certain power. And so the Yitzchak, when he wants to give a bracha to Esav, what he wants to do is he wants to make the nations, connect the nations to the divine power and message also. Here's the problem. The issue was that Esav is a good man, theoretically, in his head. Esav didn't have the ability to draw from the head into the heart. That's why his head ended up being buried next to Yitzchak. You're not allowed to bury a wicked man next to a holy man. Yet Esav's head, when he was killed by Chushim, son of Don, rolled into the grave and was buried right next to Yitzchak. And if you go into the Maras HaMachpelah, you ever seen Bina? You seen that? When you walk in on the right side, whether it is or isn't, I don't know, but it says there, this is the head of Esav. Here lies the head of Esav. So there's 4 couples buried in the Maras HaMachpelah: Adam and Chava, Avram, Sarah, Yitzchak, Rivka, Yaakov and Leah, and the head of Esav. What's the head of Esav doing over there? Very simple. It's because Esav's core is good. The idea was good. He wasn't actually fooling his father. He wanted to be good. He just didn't know how. So even though he doesn't mention Hashem's name, he doesn't say the name of Hashem, but Esav actually, he's a holy man. At his core, he's a holy man. But because he can't actualize it, that's why Rivka tells Yaakov, she says, listen here, go inside and steal the brachas of Esav. So Yaakov tells her, he says, Mami, Hein Esav achi ish sa'ir, ve'anochi ish chalak. He's a hairy man, I'm a smooth man. In Chassidus we explain the word chalak. Chalak meaning smooth, has another meaning. Chelak, it's the same word. Chelak Hashem Amoy. He says, he is a hairy man, and I, smooth, I'm a piece, a chelek of Hashem. I'm a piece of Hashem. To me, Hashem is real. He's a faker. He's a hairy man. Hair is the part of you that belies who you truly are, because your hair can be cut off you. He says, I can't go into that domain. Yaakov says, I much prefer to stay a holy man and not to have to contend with the challenges of life. And Rivka tells him, she pushes him, and she says, go out there, and I want you to put on the garments of Esav. I want you to be an Esav, and go out there and do the work of Esav. Now, in life, we're going to encounter 2 modalities of living. There are distinct modalities. You will see them all the time, everywhere. And this is what would have happened if Yaakov would not have stolen the brachas from Esav. If he wouldn't have stolen the brachas, we would have known how to be good Jews up until a certain point. We wouldn't know how to deal when life sends us a curveball, how to handle that. We wouldn't know how to handle impossible situations. We would know how to be Jews in the land of Israel, but not how to be Jews in impossible situations. Remember we discussed last week, it's really a continuation of that. That there was Avraham Avinu, and there was Yitzchak as a recap. And Avraham Avinu was the founder of Judaism, we said. So who's Yitzchak? Well, if you pay careful attention, you'll see the founder, the real founder of Judaism is actually not Avraham. Because whatever Avraham does, doesn't last. He digs wells, and the Plishtim clog them up. And all the people he brings, he converts, they disappear as soon as he goes. And Melech HaBashan says, there is no way that Avraham's Judaism is going to continue. What's Yitzchak? He's the ability to dig a well and sit with it. He's the ability to sit in one spot with one Jew and bring that Jew back. You know, if you want to be Makar of Jews, here's how you do it. You say to yourself, I'm going to make a birthright trip for 100,000 Jews. Of the 100,000 Jews, right? Let's say, well, in order to get 100,000, I have to try with 1 million. So I'm going to start with 1 million young people, hoping that 100,000 will come on my trip. Maybe the numbers are better for going on a trip. I don't know. But I'm going to get 100,000 to go on a trip. And of that 100,000, what I'm hoping for is that 10,000, I'm going to bring them into yeshiva. And of that 10,000, I'm hoping that 1,000 will actually stay. And of that 1,000, I'm hoping that 100 will become religious. That's how many kiruv organizations operate professionally. And they make people from. The question is, what happens with all the other 999,990 who didn't become from? What transpires with them? Judaism is not a statistic. It's about each and every individual. That's the work of Yitzchak. The work of Yitzchak is to sit with the individual and make sure that you get it. Where are you holding? What's your level? To make it happen to that individual. That means he digs the wells that his father couldn't bring over because his father was just spreading the message. Yitzchak sits and says, let's dig this well. Let's bring it down to this spot. And so it's painstaking work of staying in one location. You with me?
I have a question.
Yep.
Why can't you make Esav from?
So Yitzchak is, his reasoning for bringing Esav back is precisely this.
It's just that one person.
Because he sits with Esav and he says, I'm going to make Esav, I'm going to bring him back. That's what I'm going to do. Why does Yitzchak want to do this? Because that's what Yitzchak does. He works to bring back the impossible. Now you're asking, why didn't he succeed? It's very simple why he didn't succeed. Because you can never change the other person's opinions. The other person always has free choice. Did Yitzchak succeed? Of course he did. That's why Esav's head is buried with him. That's why Esav's legacy continued. Except that Rivka understood something deeper. And she realized that the legacy of Esav is awesome. Just Esav himself is the wrong candidate. She tells Yaakov, go become Esav. Go do the work. So did Yitzchak succeed with Esav? Absolutely he did. You know what Yitzchak was really trying to accomplish? So Esav has in him tremendous, tremendous powers. You know that some of the greatest people ever in history, I'm talking about Jewish history, came from Esav. Can you name some? Shmai Bavtalan, classical example. Onkelos Hager, the translation of every... There's no Chumash that's printed without Onkelos. Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir was a ger, and there's one of the famous one, a prophet. Ovadia. Ovadia is a prophet who prophesied all about the downfall of Edom, and that's because the axe that cuts the forest comes from the forest itself. Ovadia was an Edomite convert. So Esav contains in him incredible powers and forces, and that's why Yitzchak wants to give a bracha to Esav, because he wants to draw out the power of Esav from within him. Esav's an awesome guy. Problem is, Esav doesn't live up to what he is. So the bracha, someone else comes and gets the bracha. Yaakov comes and gets the bracha. How does Yaakov get the bracha? Ba achicha bemirma, Yitzchak says. He comes by deceit and by lies. You see, when the Yetzer Hara attacks us, how does he always attack you? The story is that a Jew came over to the Nehemiah Melech. He says, Rebbe, what should I do? Rabbi Melech Milizhensk. He says, Rebbe, I want to know how you do tshuva. I don't understand how you do tshuva. How do you return to Hashem? I did terrible things. I want to know, how do you return to Hashem? The Rebbe looks at him and he says, can you explain to me one thing? How do you do Aveirus in the first place? What's the manual how to do transgressions? What's the manual? You just do it. You don't ask. You just do it. Hashem says do one thing and you do the opposite. Boom, done. It's not much of a problem. That's exactly how you do tshuva. Even when Hashem says you can't do tshuva, you're not worthy, you say, I don't care, I'm doing tshuva anyway. That's like a man like Rabbi Eliezer ben Dordaya. Rabbi Eliezer ben Dordaya was a man who his whole life had sinned. He was with promiscuous women. And the last moment of his life, she says to him, that lady that he worked so hard to get to her, she says, there's no hope for you. And he says, don't you ever tell me. Nobody tells Eliezer ben Dodai that he has no hope. And he goes and he cries himself to death. And a heavenly voice comes down and proclaims, Rabbi Eliezer ben Dodai is invited straight into Gan Eden. That's the power of Teshuvah. There are two modalities by which we live. There is a tzaddik gomer, the righteous one. And then there's the challenged individual, the Baal Teshuvah, the one who has to be a Baal Teshuvah. What was supposed to be is that Yaakov was going to be the holy man, and Esav was going to be the Baal Teshuvah, and life would have been great. That was Yitzchak's intention. Rivka realized that Esav is not living up to this. Therefore, the solution must be that Yaakov needs to do both forms of work. You have to be a tzaddik, and you have to be a Baal Teshuvah. You have to do both. Which is why, in life, the realities of life are that even if you're a very, very good, solid, holy person, if you want to know the answer, why do bad things happen to good people? What's the answer? Why do bad things happen to good people? The answer is, I have absolutely no clue. That's the real answer. What we do know is when bad things happen to good people, what should good people do? Answer is? Return to Hashem. Basically, get closer to Hashem more than ever before. Take a look at that letter. Where, what's the Rebbe Rayatz telling that individual? He's saying to him, you're a good guy, but yet you lost your business, you lost everything, and you fell into a state of despair. You fall into a state of despair. What's your avodah? What's your work now? Your work now is, this is meant to spur you on to a closeness to Hashem like you never knew before. And you're going to protest and you're going to say, no, don't tell me that. Hashem doesn't love me. Why is Hashem doing this to me? If he loved me, why would he be doing this to me? Stop looking at how rosy the past was, he says. Stop looking at how dark and gloomy the future is. Look at one simple thing. You have to download a brand new disc. You have to get to a space of a bond with Hashem that a tzaddik gomer never needs. He doesn't use this playbook. A holy tzaddik is connected to Hashem. He lives in the land of Israel. It's all connected to Hashem. What's Esav? When things go awry. When they go the wrong way. And he says, here's the story. The Yetzer Hara only attacks you because he comes bemirma. The way the Nochash is the primordial snake. What he did to Chava is, he lied to her. He told her that it's a good thing to eat of the snake. Yetzer Hara always lures you into a space that is good. Don't worry, it's a good thing. Do this. And then what happens? And then when you get into that space, then you realize, oy vey, what did I do? So the solution is to attack him with the opposite force, using his own space. You attack me with deceit, I'm going to attack you back with deceit. What does that mean? Yaakov puts on the garments of Esav. I was thinking about this deeply. What does it mean to put on the garments of Esav? And here's what I think. I think it means that, so when this individual, when Aaron Hirsch was feeling a state of despair, what does that mean? The Rebbe tells him, he says, okay, if you're in despair, don't worry, just go with bitachon and emunah and it's all going to be good. And that sounds to me like a little bit undermining, in a way, the challenges of mental health, wouldn't you say? He's struggling, he's suffering. I think what it means is, when you feel that state of despair, this first step is, there's no choice. Yaakov has to put on the clothing of Esav. You have to wear the clothing of Esav. You have to walk right into that state of despair. Because if you're trying to run away from it and not into it, that means you're saying Esav's turf is somewhere else and I'm here. Yaakov has to put on the clothing of Esav. If you don't put on the clothing of Esav, you're running away from him all the time. You know that in the Maimer he explains that Yaakov afterwards, he went to Lavan and he was great. Yaakov was superb. And what he tells Lavan is, he says, listen, my friend, dear uncle, I'm a simple guy. If you were simple with me, I'll be simple with you. You're conniving and sly, okay, I'll deal with you. No problem. I'll be conniving and sly. So the Mitzvah Rebbe says, he didn't need the bracha of Yitzchak to overcome Lavan. He would have done good even without the bracha. Because he had the bracha of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. He didn't need the bracha that was for Esav. So he tells, he was by Lavan for 20 years. Then he heads back. And as he comes back, he encounters Esav. And now comes the issue. He tells Esav, what should I tell you? You know, Im Lavan Garti, I was with Lavan, V'taryag mitzvot shamanti, I kept 613 mitzvahs, I was great. By Lavan, I was great. You're the problem. And then he encounters the challenge of his life. The challenge of his life was not Lavan, but rather Esav. Specifically, what about Esav? Yaakov moves everything across the river, Ma'avar Yaboik. He puts his children and everything around, and then it says, Vayivoser Yaakov levadoi. Yaakov was left all on his own, and he fought with the angel. He wrestled with the angel. Have you ever wrestled with the angel all alone? Have you? You ever encountered the angel? You know what that angel is? What? Yeah, you know where he lives? Why is it alone? Because no one can help you. He's inside you. We look at the angel like this fellow who comes with a knife and a sword and he's fighting. It wasn't, no. That would have been easy. Yaakov knew how to handle those. The trouble with Esav was that his angel enters into my head, into my space, and now I'm stuck. And now I don't know which way to take. I don't know how to move forward. The angel is inside you. And I was listening to this podcast by a fellow Jewish guy, CEO, and I don't know his name, but his name is Scott, and he called himself Scooter. And apparently a very famous guy and a very wealthy guy. And he made a lot of people famous because his claim to fame is he runs the music industry and he's a producer and he works with them. So he talks on this podcast. He's actually fascinating, and he describes his story. Basically, he made it from rags. He made it to tremendous riches at 19 years old. He becomes a producer and he starts understanding every kid who's going to become a gazillionaire, and he starts figuring out how to handle them. And he's making money like crazy. And what I discover, the people that I'm working with, every one of them, these kids who become fabulously famous at a young age, what happens? They all fall into drugs. And some of them, and he describes one guy who actually overdosed. They become depressed. And he says a line, it's fascinating. He says, human beings were not designed to be worshipped. Human beings were designed to serve. And his story is himself trying to figure it out. So he gets married to a Jewish girl, by the way, which is amazing. And they have 3 kids. And then he describes how at some point she can't handle him anymore. And she kicks him out of the house. And he lands flat on his face. And he says, now divorced and without seeing my kids, I feel that everything was a failure. He describes how he's left the music industry. He's no longer there. And he describes how he's doing the internal work because he realizes everything he was doing was because of his own insecurities. My whole thing was to build my own insecurities. So I did all those crazy things on the outside. I was fabulously successful. And what was the purpose of it all? Of all the insecurities, the purpose was, he says, well, to bring me to a space of letting go and recognizing Hashem in my life. That's his message. Very, very, very powerful. By no means religious, but you see a Yiddish neshama on fire. That's your Esav. The Malach, the Esav, is inside you. He gets inside your head. You know what's amazing about Esav? Is that everything you do is because of Esav. Esav directs your life. He enters inside your head, inside your heart. He deposits these ideas, which are most often fake feelings, and you're trying to run away from some kind of insecurity or inadequacy, or something you're trying to run, and he pushes you in a certain direction. And he makes you move in that direction. And then you do. And one day you discover you fall flat in your face. And now the Malach is right in front of you. And you and the Malach are fighting a mortal battle. And you don't know what to do. But Yaakov already preempted it. What did he do? Yaakov stole the brachas. How did he do that? He told Esav a simple message. He says, Rivka, this is all Rivka. Rivka sent Yaakov on a field trip. And she told him, there are two ways to serve Hashem. I want you to understand this. There are sweet foods and spicy foods. Sweet food is delicious, but spicy, which would not seem to be delicious, is in a sense more powerful and tastier than sweet. She trained Yaakov not to be limited to sweet foods, to accept sometimes life can get spicy. And Yaakov had to put on these garments of Esav. And then he understood that Hashem is not only meant for tzaddikim, Hashem is also meant for Baalei Tshuva. And this empowered Yaakov in life. Empowered Yaakov to do this incredible work of drawing Hashem down to places where you wouldn't imagine Hashem to be. Here's the work. When the Malach, the angel, attacks you, he enters inside your head and he deposits deep, difficult, dark feelings. And his mission is one simple thing. He doesn't live in Eretz Yisrael, he lives in Chutz La'aretz. He's outside the land of Israel. The land of Israel is the place of Hashem. And he goes outside and he places dark feelings inside you. And if Yaakov would not have stolen the brachas from Esav, Yaakov would know how to be a good Jew, but not how to handle insane challenges which enter your head. Not how to handle that depth of despair which you would feel. But because Rivka sent Yaakov on a mission, she told him, nope, my dear child, my dear son, Judaism is not about, when you have a little boy and you have a bris, and you say, Zeh Kotan Godel Yeh, and you say, this little child should become a Godel, and you say, what's a Godel? You should be able to learn Torah, do mitzvahs, and do the thing, and you should be a holy man, and amazing and wonderful. That's not real life. Sorry. Real life is when you are faced with battle, challenges deep inside your head, deep inside your heart. And those challenges are Esav, and you want to be a Yaakov, and you want to say, I'm a Yaakov, I'm good. But Esav is the place to go. Because Esav is going to get you to places you never dreamed possible. And what Esav does is, you got to walk into the space. So let's do here's the meditation for today. The meditation goes like this. When you feel a blockage, a state of despair, instead of running away from it, you say, Rivka, what should I do? I want to run away. I don't want to go there. And Rivka says to you, Yankala, march right in. Don't run away from the feeling. Walk into it. And you allow yourself to feel the despair, the challenge, the difficulty. Walk right into the feeling. And you're inside there. And Yitzchak says, who are you? What's going on here? Like, what's with you? And Yaakov says, I'm just wearing the clothing of Esav. I'm allowing myself to experience a feeling of despair, but it's not the true me. The voice is the voice of Yaakov. And Yitzchak's excited by that. The voice says, Ki yikra Hashem elekecha lefanai. Hashem made this happen. The voice says it's always God. It's always the power of Hashem in my life. It's divine energy that's running through me. And once Yaakov gets this message, what happens is he contends constantly with the angel in his head, with the fight, the internal struggle. And he walks right in, and he marches in. And the angel's actually able to hurt Yaakov. Yes, he does. He hurts him on his Gida Nasha on the thigh, and he harms him. And Yaakov was unable to walk forward, but he was limping. And Yaakov walks right back out. And when he does, what he discovers is that Esav was coming at him with 400 men. Esav disappears. Because the greatest fear you have, fear, is an acronym, false evidence appearing real. When you have that greatest fear and you think it's impossible and you think that the challenges are beyond what you can handle, don't despair. March right in. When you march right in, Esav and 400 men just disappear. Because the power of Esav is only in your head. Rivka's message was, Esav is great. Esav's great things. The greatest moments in your life are the Esav moments. The greatest experience of your life are if you can walk into that yush, into that despair, and in that space, carve out a place and say, I have bitachon, I have emunah, I'm marching forward. I'm not denying the feeling. I'm putting on the clothing of Esav because Rivka told me to. And as I march forward, I take that feeling with me. What happens is the miracle of Hashem appears. Because if Yaakov would not have stood on the brachas, then we would know how to be good Jews. We wouldn't know how to be super Jews. And what's the super Jew? The one who can walk into impossible situations. It's very difficult when it actually happens, because it doesn't come with a playbook. It doesn't come with a guidebook. When it happens, you're thinking to yourself, that was great class you did, but nothing to do with what I'm going through. And that's where the work comes. Because your Esav is yours. He enters in the mortal battle between your angel, and he knows exactly what to tell you. The Yitzhar is brilliant. He knows exactly what to tell each individual for them. And the work is to internalize this message into your own private life. And when you do, Esav disappears with all his 400 men. So Yitzchak wants to give a bracha to Esav because that's the power. Yaakov steals the bracha. He says, watch. I can walk into the nations. You know all those gerim that Esav has? I'm going to bring them. I'm going to bring them out. Such is the power of Yaakov when he's got the garments of Esav. Don't run away from these difficult experiences. Embrace them. Walk right into them. And allow Hashem to help you.